I am 64 years old, and I never thought the most defining moment of my later years would happen in the middle of a crowded hotel lobby. The drive to the Coastal Pines Resort took 4 hours, and every minute in the back seat of my daughter's SUV felt like an eternity. My daughter Sarah sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone and sighing loudly every time I shifted my weight. Her husband Tom gripped the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road, completely ignoring the thick tension in the car. "Tom, can you turn the AC up? It's stifling," Sarah complained, glaring at the rearview mirror as if my mere presence in the back seat was raising the temperature. I stayed quiet, watching the tall pine trees blur past the window. 2 weeks ago, Sarah had casually mentioned this family trip, throwing the invitation at me like an afterthought. "We have an extra spot if you really have nothing else to do, Mom." I knew exactly what that meant. She wanted a free babysitter for my 2 young grandsons who were currently kicking the back of my seat. I had accepted the invitation not for Sarah, but because I wanted to spend time with the boys. My husband Richard passed away 5 years ago. Since then, Sarah had slowly pushed me to the margins of her life. I was the emergency contact, the last-minute babysitter, the silent wallet she tapped into when her credit card bills got too high. But I was never truly a guest. As we pulled into the long, winding driveway of the resort, the towering glass doors and lush green landscaping looked beautiful. Tom parked the car, and Sarah immediately hopped out, stretching her legs. "Grab the boys' small bags, Mom," she directed, not even looking my way. "I need to go handle the front desk." I picked up my own modest overnight bag and the boys' backpacks, following her into the grand air-conditioned lobby. I didn't know it yet, but this was the last time I would ever follow her orders. The lobby of Coastal Pines was stunning, featuring a massive stone fireplace and a chandelier that stretched across the vaulted ceiling. I stood a few feet behind Sarah as she approached the polished reception desk. Tom was busy trying to wrangle the boys near a large indoor fountain. A polite young clerk greeted Sarah, asking for her reservation. I watched Sarah hand over her ID, lean against the counter, and lower her voice just enough to be conspiratorial, but loud enough for me to hear perfectly. "Actually, we need to make a change," Sarah instructed. "We canceled the old woman's room. She can just sleep on the pull-out couch in our suite with the kids. Or honestly, she deserves to sleep in the trash storage for making us drag her along." A couple standing at the next counter turned their heads, their eyes wide. The clerk blinked, clearly uncomfortable. "Ma'am, you want to cancel the second room completely?" "Yes," Sarah sneered, finally glancing back at me with a cold, victorious smirk. "She doesn't need her own space. We aren't wasting money on it." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. Decades of marriage and managing a household had taught me that losing your temper gives away your power. Instead, I quietly stepped around Sarah and walked directly up to the clerk. I set my bags down, opened my purse, and pulled out a heavy metallic gold card. It wasn't a standard credit card. It was a Founders Club credential. "Excuse me." I addressed the clerk, my voice steady and calm. "I won't be staying in her suite." I placed the gold card on the marble counter. The clerk looked down, her eyes darting from the card to her computer screen. She typed something quickly, and all the color drained from her face. "Mrs. Burke," she stammered, standing up a little straighter. I'm so sorry. We didn't realize you were arriving today." Sarah scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please. She just has some outdated loyalty card. Just cancel her room." The clerk ignored Sarah entirely. "One moment, Mrs. Burke. I am calling the general manager right now." Less than a minute later, a tall man in a tailored charcoal suit hurried out from the back offices. He bypassed Sarah completely and extended a warm, respectful hand toward me. "Mrs. Burke, it is an absolute honor." He beamed. "I'm Marcus, the general manager. We had no idea a member of the founding investment group was visiting us this weekend." Your late husband's trust still holds a significant stake in our hospitality group." Sarah's mouth fell open. She looked at Marcus, then at me, then back at the gold card resting on the counter. "Investment group stake. What are you talking about?" I didn't look at my daughter. I kept my eyes on Marcus. "Thank you. I prefer to travel quietly. However, it seems there has been a mix-up with my accommodations. My daughter just canceled the room I was supposed to stay in." Marcus frowned, shooting a brief professional but icy glance at Sarah. "That is entirely unacceptable. We will upgrade you immediately to the top-floor panoramic suite, Mrs. Burke. It has a private balcony and a full kitchen. Of course, all your dining and spa services will be complimentary during your stay." "Wait, Mom," Sarah stammered, stepping forward. The arrogance had vanished from her face, replaced by raw panic. "You own part of this place. Since when you live on a fixed income?" "You assumed I lived on a fixed income, Sarah," I corrected quietly. "Richard and I made smart decisions. I just never felt the need to brag about them." Marcus gestured to a bellhop. "Please take Mrs. Burke's luggage to the panoramic suite." "What about our room?" Sarah demanded, turning to Marcus. "Since she's an owner, we should get an upgrade too, right?" "Your reservation is separate, ma'am," Marcus replied politely. "And since you just canceled the second room, you are booked into a standard double." I turned and walked toward the elevators, leaving Sarah standing in the lobby, completely speechless. The panoramic suite on the 4th floor was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean, and a massive king-sized bed sat in the center of the room. I unpacked my small bag, poured myself a glass of sparkling water from the minibar, and sat on the balcony. For the first time all day, I could breathe. 20 minutes later, a loud, frantic knock echoed through the suite. I took my time walking to the door. When I opened it, Sarah and Tom were standing in the hallway. Tom looked nervous. Sarah looked furious. "Are you going to let us in?" Sarah demanded, trying to push past me. I held the door, firmly blocking her path. "No." "What do you want, Sarah?" "What do I want?" she hissed, keeping her voice low so other guests wouldn't hear. "I want to know why you lied to us for 5 years. You sat in our house, letting us pay for dinner, letting us think you were scraping by while you secretly own a luxury resort." "I never lied," I answered smoothly. "You never asked about my finances, and you never offered to pay for anything without complaining about it. Furthermore, you just told a stranger I deserved to sleep in the trash." I was stressed from the drive. Sarah defended her face, flushing red. "You're punishing us for a joke." "It wasn't a joke," I stated. "It was exactly how you view me. Now hand me your spare key to my house." Sarah blinked. "What?" "My house key, the one you used to drop the kids off without asking. Give it to me." Tom nudged her. "Sarah, just give it to her." Sarah reached into her purse, her hands shaking, and pulled out the brass key. She shoved it into my hand. "Fine. If you're going to act like a selfish child, don't expect to see your grandsons this weekend." "That is your choice," I replied. "Have a good vacation." I closed the door until it clicked shut and locked the deadbolt. I spent the afternoon exactly how I wanted to. I changed into my swimsuit, put on a wide-brimmed hat, and took the private elevator down to the resort's adults-only pool. I found a shaded cabana, ordered an iced tea, and opened a book I had been trying to read for months. Around 3 o'clock, I noticed a shadow fall over my page. I looked up to see Tom standing awkwardly at the edge of the cabana. He was holding a damp towel, looking thoroughly exhausted. "Hey, Monica," he muttered, scratching the back of his neck. "Sarah sent me. The boys are driving her crazy in that standard room. It's too small for the 4 of us." "That sounds like a difficult situation," I remarked, taking a slow sip of my tea. Tom shifted his weight. "Yeah. So, Sarah was hoping, since you have that massive suite, maybe the boys could come stay with you, just for the weekend. It would really help us out. I studied my son-in-law. He wasn't malicious, just entirely passive. He let Sarah run the show even when it meant disrespecting me. "No, Tom," I answered simply. He looked stunned. "No, but you always watch them." "I watch them when I am respected in my own home," I clarified. Sarah made it very clear in the lobby that I am a burden. "I wouldn't want to burden you by taking up space in your family trip." "Monica, she's just dramatic. She didn't mean it." "She meant it," I countered. "And you stood there and said nothing. I suggest you go back and help your wife entertain your children." I picked up my book and resumed reading. Tom stood there for a few more seconds, waiting for me to cave. When I didn't even glance back up, he finally turned and walked away. His shoulders slumped. By 6 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Mom, let's have dinner." My treat. "We need to talk. Meet us at the Ocean Grill at 7. I knew exactly what this was. Sarah had spent the afternoon doing the math in her head. She realized that alienating a mother with substantial hidden assets was a terrible financial move. I decided to go purely to see how she would play her hand. I arrived at the Ocean Grill right on time. They were already seated at a large booth. Sarah had put on fresh makeup and a forced, tight smile. The boys were busy coloring on their placemats. "Mom, over here." Sarah waved her tone artificially sweet. I slid into the booth across from her. "I already ordered a bottle of the Reserve Pinot Noir," Sarah announced cheerfully. "And we're getting the seafood tower to start. Tom, isn't this place just incredible?" Tom nodded silently, staring at the breadbasket. "It's a lovely restaurant," I agreed. I looked at the menu and ordered a simple grilled salmon and a glass of water. Throughout the meal, Sarah tried to steer the conversation toward my assets. "So, Dad really invested in this place. Did he invest anywhere else?" "It's just so fascinating, Mom. We should really sit down with a financial planner. Tom and I have been thinking about upgrading our house, and it would be great to get your advice." "My advice is to live within your means," I answered calmly, cutting a piece of my salmon. Sarah's smile strained. "Of course, but families help each other out, right? Families respect each other," I corrected. "They don't cancel hotel rooms and humiliate each other in public." Sarah gritted her teeth. She ate her expensive lobster tail in silence, clearly waiting for the right moment to secure her victory. When dinner was over, the waiter approached our table with a black leather folder. He placed it directly in the center of the table. Sarah didn't reach for it. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and smiled at me. "Thanks for joining us, Mom. It was really nice to catch up." She was waiting for me to pick up the tab. After all, I was the wealthy owner. It was the natural order of things in her mind. She pushed, and I paid. I calmly reached into my purse, pulled out my founder's card, and handed it directly to the waiter. "Excuse me," I addressed him. "Could you please charge only the grilled salmon to this card? The rest of the bill will be paid by my daughter." Sarah's smug expression shattered. "Wait, what?" The waiter nodded professionally. "Of course, ma'am. I'll split the check right now." "Mom, you can't be serious," Sarah hissed, leaning over the table. "The seafood tower and the wine alone are over $300. I told you it was my treat to be polite. But you're rich." "You said it was your treat." I reminded her, grabbing my small evening bag. "I assumed you were keeping your word. You wanted to manage your own family's expenses, and I am letting you." "Tom, do something," Sarah snapped. Tom pulled out his wallet, his face pale as he looked at the remaining total on the receipt. "Sarah, this is going to max out the card." "That sounds like a budgeting issue." I observed mildly, standing up from the booth. I looked down at my grandsons who were happily eating ice cream. Good night, boys. Have a wonderful time tomorrow. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving Sarah arguing quietly but frantically with Tom over their credit cards. The cool ocean breeze felt wonderful on my face. The next morning, I woke up early, enjoyed coffee on my balcony, and decided to visit the resort's botanical gardens. My phone rang just as I was putting on my walking shoes. It was Marcus, the general manager. "Good morning, Mrs. Burke. I apologize for the intrusion," Marcus stated smoothly. "I am calling from the front desk. Your daughter is currently at the spa. She has requested our premium deep tissue massage and a facial, and she is attempting to charge the total $550 to your suite." I sighed softly, though I wasn't surprised. Sarah always pushed boundaries to see where they would break. "Thank you for checking, Marcus," I replied. "Please decline the charge. I do not authorize anyone to put expenses on my room." "Understood, Mrs. Burke. We will inform her immediately." I hung up the phone and went for my walk. I didn't need to be there to see the outcome, but later that afternoon, I ran into Tom in the lobby. He looked completely defeated. "She was humiliated, Monica," Tom muttered, falling into step beside me. "The spa receptionist told her in front of a dozen people that her room charge was declined. She had to walk out in a robe and change back into her street clothes." "She tried to spend my money without asking," I pointed out. "The humiliation was her own doing, Tom." "She's packing the car," he admitted quietly. "She says we're leaving a day early because this trip is ruined. She expects you to ride back with us." "I won't be riding back with you," I answered. "Monica, it's a 4-hour drive. How are you going to get home?" "I am perfectly capable of managing my own transportation. Please tell the boys goodbye for me." I turned away, heading toward the garden path. An hour later, I stood near the valet station, my small overnight bag by my feet. Sarah and Tom's SUV was pulled up to the curb. Sarah was furiously stuffing bags into the trunk, slamming the hatch shut with excessive force. When she saw me standing there, she marched over, her face set in a hard, angry line. "Are you getting in, or are you going to throw another tantrum?" she snapped. "We are leaving. Now." "I am not getting in that car, Sarah," I replied quietly. "Oh, really? What are you going to do? Walk home." She crossed her arms, a mocking smile on her lips. She fully believed I would eventually fold, that my independence was just a temporary act. Just then, a sleek black town car pulled smoothly up to the curb right behind their cluttered SUV. The driver stepped out, adjusted his tie, and opened the rear door. "Mrs. Burke," the driver asked, "your car service back to the city is ready whenever you are." Sarah's arms dropped to her sides. She stared at the town car, then at me, the reality finally sinking in. She had lost control. She couldn't bully me, she couldn't use me, and she certainly couldn't dictate my life anymore. "You're really doing this?" Sarah asked, her voice cracking slightly, the anger finally giving way to a realization that the dynamic had permanently shifted. "You're just going to leave us?" "You left me in this lobby 2 days ago, Sarah," I reminded her, picking up my bag. "I am just taking a different ride home." I climbed into the quiet, pristine back seat of the town car. I didn't look back as we pulled away from the resort. The drive home was incredibly peaceful. I listened to soft jazz, drank sparkling water, and watched the scenery change from coastal highways to familiar suburban streets. When I finally arrived at my quiet 2-story house, it felt different. It felt entirely mine. The first thing I did the next morning was call a local locksmith. By noon, every lock on the front, back, and side doors had been replaced with shiny new hardware. Sarah's spare key, the one she had surrendered at the resort, sat in the kitchen trash can. A few days later, my phone rang. It was Sarah. I let it go to voicemail. She left a long, rambling message, a mix of half apologies and subtle complaints about how hard her week had been. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't acknowledge the way she had treated me. She just wanted the old Monica back, the convenient, invisible Monica. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't cut my family off completely. Months later, I allowed Tom to bring the boys over for a Sunday afternoon visit. I made them cookies and we played board games in the living room. Sarah didn't come, and I didn't ask her to. The boundary was set thick and immovable. I finally opened the financial portfolios Richard and I had built. I started planning a trip to Italy, a place I had always wanted to see but never went, because Sarah had needed me to watch the kids. For years, I had shrunk myself to fit into the small, dusty corner my daughter had assigned me. I had thought endurance was a sign of a good mother. But as I sat on my porch holding a cup of hot coffee and looking out at the morning sun, I realized the truth. True peace doesn't come from enduring disrespect. It comes from packing your bags, handing back the check, and finally owning your own worth. If there is one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that true love, even family love, should never require you to shrink yourself or endure constant disrespect. For years, I confused keeping the peace with being a good mother. I thought that if I stayed quiet and helpful enough, they would eventually see my value. But the truth is, you can't force people to respect you. You can only choose to stop giving them front row seats to your life when they don't. Setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish or bitter. It simply means you finally decided that your peace of mind is worth protecting. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my story today. Have you ever had to make a tough decision to protect your own peace, even with family? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to read your experiences and support each other. If you connected with this story and want to hear more about finding your strength and taking back control of your life, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next video.